Okay friends, one of the first things we have to do is safely raise and support the vehicle so the rear wheels are off the ground. After that, remove all 5 of your lug nuts and the wheel. Now with the wheels off, let's continue on by removing this slider bolt. Pull that out of there. Now we're going to use our pry bar, come under this area, we can pry this up. The reason why I do this is because I like to open it up so that way there I can completely inspect the pads. Now with that up, we have access to our caliper mounting bolts. Now we can remove our caliper, set this aside. Now it's going to be time to remove the brake rotor. Something to pay attention to is this area along here. You can see there's a lot of corrosion buildup. That might potentially hold the rotor on. Other than that, you have e-brake shoes that are located inside. If you notice that this comes free, but it doesn't want to come off, you might have to unplug this right here, find the adjuster on the back side, and de-adjust the e-brake shoes. Let's grab onto this, give it a nice wiggle, and remove it. Now the next thing we're going to want to do, obviously, is get the cotter pin off of here. Ours is a little hard to see because it's pretty rusted. But just go ahead and get the locking cotter pin out of the way. Once the cotter pin's off, we're going to get this tin off of here. Now looking at the axle, I can tell that the threaded area is very rusted. Typically, if this was going to be my car, I would replace the axle at the same time as doing the bearing. For this video, it's an instructional video, so I'll just continue. I'm going to remove the axle nut. Let's get this washer off of here as well. Let's put some penetrant in there. Next, we're going to use a center punch and our hammer, and just make sure that this axle drives through from the bearing a little bit. Now from the back side, we need to remove our ABS wire from the wheel bearing. To do that, it's going to be very simple. Just carefully grab onto it, give it a nice wiggle, and draw it away. Inspect it, make sure it doesn't look like it's damaged in any way. Once you're sure it looks good, go ahead and set it aside. With the ABS wire out of the way, the next thing we're going to do is remove our 4 bolts that hold the wheel bearing to the knuckle itself. Something to think about though is that in between those two, you're going to have a backing plate, which is this area right here. The backing plate, of course, once we start taking this apart, is more than likely going to be stuck to the bearing, so that's something that you're going to have to remove. Do the same to the other 3. Last one. Now that we have all the bolts out that are holding the bearing to the knuckle, the next thing that we need to do is start separating the backing plate and bearing from the knuckle itself. To do that, I'm going to come along the back right here and just help drive it away from the knuckle. After that, what we're going to have to do is separate the backing plate from the wheel bearing by coming in through these holes with a nice long punch. Now, as we're doing this, we want to make sure that we're not pulling the axle out as well. So just continue on by making sure that this is nice and free. So now the next thing we're going to have to do is remove the bearing from the backing plate here. If you have something like a torch, you can come along the back and try to heat up the backing plate a little bit and then spray it with some penetrant. That's going to help you out. I'm just going to take this air chisel, come up along the top here. I'll put a bar along the back side of the bearing. There it is, friends. Now that it's all apart, let's clean up the mounting area. You want to make sure you get this area nice and cleaned. Of course, that's where the backing plate's going to go against. You want to make sure you get the back side of the backing plate clean as well. And then, of course, we'll make sure we clean up our bolts at the end. Now it's going to be time to get our brand new wheel bearing on here. Pay attention to the back side. This is where your ABS sensor is going to go. You want to make sure that you have this facing towards the front upper. It's going to essentially go just like this. Let's take our backing plate, put our axle through it, of course, grab the bearing, put it in between your e-brake shoes here, get everything lined up. Okay, now let's grab our bolts from the back side. Okay, I've got one lined up, now let's do the other 3. With all the bolts started, now we'll just snug them up. I'm going to do this crisscross. Once we have them snug, we'll torque them all to 77 foot-pounds. Time to reconnect our ABS wire here. You're going to look at it, you're going to see a flat area on one side, and on the other side you got kind of like a little bubble that comes out. You want the bubble facing in towards the center of the vehicle. I'm just going to hold the sensor with some pliers, and then I'm going to carefully try to pry it right in there. Grab onto it, make sure it's secured, and it's definitely not loose. Now we're going to get this a little lower to the ground. I'm going to put my bar across these right here, that way this can't spin. Let's get our washer on here. Now let's get our axle nut on there. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and snug this up. Once it's bottomed out, we'll torque it to 181 foot-pounds. Now we're going to put on our locking clip here. Just going to line it up. Then we can put our pin through the slot here. Now, of course, we'll pin this over so there's no way it can come apart on its own. Let's apply some copper never seize on the hub surface here. Now let's put on our rotor. Bring this right down. Let's go ahead and slide this in. Now we're going to put in both of our caliper bracket bolts from the back side here. Now we're just going to bottom these out, and then we'll torque these to 80 foot-pounds. Now we'll torque this to 32 foot-pounds. Now let's get our wheel back up on here. We'll start all of our lug nuts, bottom them out, get the wheel back on the ground, and then we'll torque them to 100 foot-pounds. Torqued. Okay friends, all you have left now to do is go ahead and pump up that brake pedal, and then I would take it for a road test down to my local alignment shop.